Magneto and Superman face off. Who will win? Superman, or Kal-El, is the last son of the planet Krypton, raised by a yellow sun and endowed with powers beyond all human biological standards. He can fly at supersonic speeds, breaking through sound with a single heel thrust. His eyes can shoot heat rays strong enough to melt heavy metals, his breath can freeze entire oceans, and his body is almost immune to all physical attacks. Magneto, a man who witnessed the brutality of humanity from a young age, has since become the embodiment of the ideals of control, initiative, and a deep understanding of the pain of the marginalized. As an Omega-level mutant, Magneto has the power to manipulate the entire electromagnetic spectrum, controlling metals, magnetism, light, and plasma energy on a cosmic scale. In the vastness of the dangerous universe, where cosmic entities can destroy planets with a single move, there exists a power that comes not from scepters, not from ancient magic, not from futuristic technology, but from the pure workings of physics, magnetism. And Magneto, with his extraordinary intelligence, has weaponized this invisible force into a nearly impenetrable form of defense, the magnetic field. When Magneto enters a battle, he does not simply manipulate the metal around him. The first thing he does, almost by reflex, is to surround himself with an energy field. At first glance, it appears to be just a thin shield, almost invisible to the naked eye. But within it are billions of electromagnetic forces arranged in dense layers, constantly interacting and responding instantly to every movement around him. This is more than just a shield. This is a mobile fortress of a master tactician. This class of glass has been seen to withstand a direct hit from Mjolnir, the hammer Odin bestowed upon Thor. The impact, under any other circumstances, would have been enough to crush a mountainside or blow away a battleship. But for Magneto, all that happened was a metallic clang stopped in midair. Not a crack, not a movement. And Thor? He stared in disbelief at the invisible force that had deflected his weapon. In a clash with the ultimate Nimrod Sentinel from the future, the machine that destroyed most of the X-Men in a single battle, Magneto stood alone in a rain of disintegrating energy. White beams of energy blurred space, puncturing any matter they touched. The attack once reduced a city to ash. But this time, Magneto stood still, calm, and the force field around him absorbed everything. Every beam of energy that came near was deflected, distorted, and dissipated as if it had never existed. It was not luck. It was mathematics, quantum mechanics, and a complete understanding of how nature works. Going even further, he once blocked a beam of energy from the eyes of Galactus, the planet-consuming entity, considered a god in the Marvel Universe. A look from Galactus can cause the Earth to melt, the sky to disappear, and reality to shake. But in that moment, Magneto raised his hand, the force field surrounding him glowed brightly, and destruction stopped at the edge of the magnetic field. Even if it was only for a few seconds, it was enough for the entire universe to understand. Where Magneto stood, nature had to stop for a moment. So, if Superman, who could break mountains with a punch, who had flown through dimensions, threw his strongest punch at that field, what would happen? Superman can break through concrete walls several meters thick and even withstand the attacks of Doomsday and Darkseid. But what he is up against does not matter. Not a body or a weapon, but the embodiment of pure physics. Every punch Superman throws is absorbed, broken into millions of tiny electrical pulses, and then dissipated into thin air, as if it had never existed. The painful truth is, you cannot break something that has no physical form, and that is something Magneto knows better than anyone. Magneto does not fight for glory. He fights as a strategist, and his energy field is not just a defense. It is a stage, a territory, a death trap. As Superman tries to reach it with all his might, every second that passes is a cell drained of sunlight. And outside that dome, the world goes on but Superman, trapped inside, alone, and growing weaker with each breath. In any confrontation between superhuman icons, one usually thinks of energy, explosive strength, or super speed. But some battles are not won by punches, but by the cold sophistication of a look that penetrates from cell to molecule. Magneto, more than anyone in the Marvel Universe, understands this. He doesn't seek out his enemies' strengths, he seeks out their weaknesses. And in Superman's case, that weakness may lie in his blood. Kal-El, though not of Earth, shares many biological traits with humans. From his shape, to his digestion, to the blood that flows through his veins. In most comics and movies, Superman's blood is depicted as a bright red, a seemingly ordinary detail that hides a deadly secret. The redness is a clear sign of high iron content, similar to humans. For Magneto, it is a wide-open portal. When Magneto confronted Apocalypse, one of the most powerful mutants in history, an ancient entity with complete control over the molecular structure of his body, a being that could regenerate, transform, and adapt to any physical attack. But before Magneto, Apocalypse was not invincible. In that fateful battle, with just a slight movement of his hand, Magneto pulled Apocalypse's blood through his scalp, exploding the immortal god's skull in midair. The blood, drop by drop, like tiny iron bullets, flew out of the victim's body with a cold, painful screech. So, if that could happen to an entity with perfect molecular abilities like Apocalypse, what would happen if Magneto applied the same method to Superman, who was incapable of controlling his internal organs at the molecular level? A nightmare. Imagine the scene. In the isolated space of the force field, Superman is trying to strike the final blow to break Magneto's defenses. But at that moment, Magneto doesn't need to move. He stands still, his eyes locked in deadly focus, and with a slight nod, the magnetic field around Superman's body begins to move. Every iron molecule in his blood, the primary carrier of oxygen, is suddenly removed from circulation. First comes a cold feeling running down his spine. Then his heart starts to pound, his blood starts to bubble slightly, then tiny blood droplets start to emerge from his veins, seep through his skin, and float in the air. Superman is stunned. His vision blurs. He no longer has enough energy to focus the heat beam. His body trembles. His legs buckle. And on Magneto's face, there is still the same calm, eerie silence. He doesn't need to raise a hand, doesn't need to strike. He just gives orders, and they obey. Attacking from the outside is difficult enough, but when the battlefield is right inside the body, no shield, no counterattack can save Superman in time. He is a god, yes, but Magneto does not fight like a normal person. He attacks like an anatomist with the intelligence of a perfect strategist. The scary thing is, it doesn't matter how strong Superman is. Even though he's a Kryptonian, he's still a living being, with blood, a heart, and a brain. And when those elements are controlled by Magneto, the fight is no longer about strength, but about survival. Magneto doesn't need to be the strongest to defeat the strongest. He doesn't dominate with muscle or brute force. Magneto wins with the most dangerous weapon in any fight, knowledge. And if there's anything that proves his power better than any argument, it's the list of terrifying beings he's subdued the symbols of invincibility. We've already mentioned Apocalypse, who has been around since ancient Egypt, wielding alien technology, molecular manipulation, and virtual immortality. In Marvel history, he's a global threat, an unstoppable war god. But in a confrontation with Magneto, that power was neutralized in an instant, not by swords, not by magic, just by one thing. Magneto pulled Apocalypse's blood from his skull, through his flesh, as if sucking the life out of him. It wasn't a battle that lasted hours. It was a short, sharp, precise moment that ended in deadly silence. Thor Odinson, son of Odin, heir to the power of Asgard, a warrior who has fought and survived thousands of battles on a cosmic scale. His hammer Mjolnir is not simply a weapon, but an embodiment of the Force, to be wielded by only those worthy. Yet in a rare clash, the sacred symbol of Mjolnir was deflected by Magneto's magnetic force. That's right. By rerouting the magnetic field around the weapon, Magneto made Mjolnir no longer a direct attack. Thor, who had blasted a Celestial with his Thunderbolt, could not penetrate the force field surrounding Magneto. Not because he lacked the power, but because the power could not reach its target. It's impossible to talk about ultimate power without mentioning the Phoenix Force, a cosmic entity that represents the cycle of rebirth, destruction, and creation. The Phoenix Force can resurrect worlds, erase galaxies, and shatter reality with its mind. In the comics, when Jean Grey was possessed by the Phoenix, she became a threat to the entire galaxy, and almost no one, not even the Celestials, could control that immortal flame. And yet Magneto, for a brief moment, did the unthinkable. He held the Phoenix, even for a few minutes, inside a force field. He didn't destroy it, no one could. But to contain, to stop, to slow down a cosmic entity like the Phoenix is a feat beyond the limits of any superhero. What does that say? Magneto doesn't need to kill his enemies to win. He just needs to isolate, lock down, and neutralize them. It happened to the Phoenix, it happened to Thor, it happened to Apocalypse. And if history is any guide, it could happen to Superman. And that creates a terrifying truth. Magneto doesn't pick the weakest opponent, he picks the toughest. Superman, for all his greatness, is just a warrior in his eyes. A warrior with weaknesses, with blood, with energy to maintain, with limits. And for Magneto, those limits are the spark that starts a game he has always won in the past. When Magneto appeared, Superman did not hesitate. He acted on instinct, an instinct that had saved the Earth hundreds of times. At supersonic speed, he rushed forward, throwing a punch with all his might, hoping to end the fight in the first few seconds. His eyes glowed red, his hands swirled in the air, and gravity beneath his feet shattered as he launched himself forward like a bullet. First tactical mistake. Superman assumed victory would come from overwhelming speed and strength. But Magneto did not fight by the same rules. In a split second, the magnetic force field surrounding Magneto glowed softly. There was no bang, no reaction, but Superman's entire strike seemed to hit an invisible void. No rebound, it was completely swallowed. Magneto did not move. He just stood still, letting the blow pass by like wind blowing through a cold block of stone. After an initial minute of failure, Superman switched to a long-range combat mode. He flew up, firing heat rays from his eyes, creating a constant pressure to break the force field. Magneto did not counterattack. He strengthened the force field to the molecular level, creating a dome that covered the entire battlefield with a giant energy cage that blocked all sunlight radiation from entering. In that moment, the sky turned cold gray. All the light outside was bent, eliminated, like a sudden sunset falling on the world. The attack did not come from the front, but from the environment. Superman, who was completely dependent on solar energy, began to gradually weaken. The energy circuits in each cell slowed down. The process of power regeneration fell into a state of stagnation. And while he continued to attack the defensive shell, each punch consumed more energy than could be restored. It was a countdown game, where time was on Magneto's side. When he saw Superman begin to show signs of exhaustion, his breathing was labored, his movements slowed. Magneto moved into the third phase of his strategy, biological neutralization. He began scanning Kal-El's body, searching for iron concentrations in his blood. Once he located his circulatory system, Magneto created a microscopic magnetic wave that gently pulled the tiny iron molecules from the plasma. The blood began to lose its ability to carry oxygen. The muscles were no longer fueled. Superman felt as if he was being strangled from the inside out. He crouched, his knees buckled, but he did not surrender. With shaking hands, he pushed himself up one last time. Magneto did not strike the finishing blow. He did not need to kill. He simply needed to prove that the most powerful being in the universe could be pinned down like a battery-free toy. He created a superconducting magnetic web around Superman, each strand an electromagnetic pulse that flexed and contracted in response to every movement. Kal-El moved, and the web tightened. Every breath became a heavy energy cost. Under the relentless pressure, Superman had no choice. He collapsed, his eyes still bright but without the glow of heroism. And Magneto, coldly, said one last thing: power without strategy is just roaring without purpose.